We're going to go ahead and start recording the meeting. And I apologize that I didn't do that ahead of time. We're going to go ahead and start recording the meeting. It'll be posted on the city website so community members who weren't able to attend in person can still view the meeting. We're going to ask that you please mute yourself when not speaking, and feel free to use the chat box to ask questions or get technical help. You can also use the raise hand function if you're logged in on a computer or smartphone, or press *9 if you're calling in from your phone. That way we can call upon you before speaking. In a few moments, we're going to ask that you rename yourself based on the topic that holds the most interest to you. If you're calling in from your phone, I'm going to give you an opportunity to pick your topic after I send everyone into the breakout groups when we get to that section. So if you're calling in on your phone and you don't have access to rename yourself, don't worry about that. So where do I go to rename myself? If you move your mouse to the bottom of your screen, you should see a toolbar with a participants button. If you click on the participants button, you should see your name come up at the top right-hand corner. Click on your name and then the More button, and you'll be able to edit your name for this Zoom meeting. This is also the toolbar at the bottom. There is also where you'll find the mute and unmute button. So, in order to move you into the breakout groups based on your topics, what we're going to ask is that you rename yourself with a number associated with the topic. So for instance, if I was most interested in neighborhoods and urban form, I'd rename myself to and then Jen Dart. If you're comfortable doing so and would like, you may also insert your preferred pronouns after your name. If you're calling in from your phone and can't rename yourself, again, it's no problem. I will be briefly leaving you in that main session after the breakout group and put you into the group that you'd like to join. So we're going to do our best to get everyone into their preferred topic, but if one group is too large, we may have to reassign some people to give enough time for everyone to participate in the discussion. So we really appreciate your understanding on that. If you can go ahead and take a minute to rename yourself now, actually, can you go back to the next, that last slide. Go ahead and take a minute to rename yourself now, and then please let us know in the chat box if you're having trouble, and we'll do our best to assist. I'm also going to enter the names and numbers into the chat, so anyone who joins the meeting late or is having difficulty has that information. So I'll do that right now. Okay.
We did have a question about the difference between growth and development versus neighborhoods and urban form. And I just wanted to indicate that I answered that question in the chat. If you have that same question.
Thanks, David.
Okay. Oh, and there's another question in the chat.
So the main difference, I guess, between growth and development versus neighborhoods, urban form, is growth and development is looking at sort of the large scale, zoning types, large scale patterns of development. Whereas neighborhoods, urban form deals more at the project level with, kind of the design of buildings, the look and feel of neighborhoods.
Okay, so it looks like a lot of people have gotten the renaming down. And for those of you that are just entering, if you can go ahead and rename yourself, if possible, with one of the 4 topics. And if you're not sure, you can go ahead and just pick one, or I can just assign you one. when we get to that point.
Jennifer, what are the 4 topics? We don't see those on the screen anymore.
Oh, they should be on the PowerPoint. It's growth and development is the first one. The
Right.
second one is neighborhoods and urban form. The third is community and health. And the fourth is environment and sustainability. And I've popped them into the, oh, they didn't all go for some reason. Sorry about that. Let me redo this.
Can somebody verify they can still see my screen? Is it still up? Okay, great. And I would say probably for the interest of time, we might want to keep going just, and Jen, you can probably sort anybody who still is unable to figure it out when we break into the groups.
Yep, I can definitely do that.
Elo, I don't see your screen at all.
Okay, are there other participants that can see it? Otherwise, I'll try and reshare it.
I see it.
Okay,
I
well, we're
see
going
it.
to go into polling in a minute, so I'll make sure that when we transition, I'll reshare so everybody can see. So
you want to go to the next slide, Dilo?
yes.
So this is a perfect slide for our moment right now. Please be patient with us as we work through this new all digital era. As with every meeting, really, since we've had, I think, COVID in-person restrictions, there's always going to be some difficulty. So we appreciate you being patient with us and being patient with yourselves. And we're really happy that you're here and we appreciate your participation. And if there's anything we can do to assist, if there's technical problems, we will definitely do our best to do so. But thanks again for being patient with us.
Yeah, so to reiterate that, we're all really, really happy to have everyone here with us tonight. And we're going to reward you for your effort by putting you through a quiz. So what I would like everybody to do is to go to this site, sift.ly, no www, just type this right into your browser and enter in this participant code, APB8. And I'm seeing these devices start to get connected, 7 devices, 10 devices, perfect. And while you guys are all connecting, I'm just gonna reshare my screen and see if that helps the participant who couldn't see. Okay. So this is the screen that we are going to be using. Please participate here. Again, this has the site and the code. We have 28 devices connected. And I'm going to start just with this first polling question. What is your favorite place in Humboldt? This is sort of a softball so people can get used to the software. Meeting Sift is a great polling platform that we plan to use throughout the whole visioning over the course of the next year. It's really great because people can use it to verbatim share information without any translation from staff, and we can really pull out themes using this pretty easily. So it looks like somebody said their favorite place in Humboldt was the beach, Arcata, Blue Lake, the Bottoms, Big Lagoon, a lot of nature coming out here. Home, I like that one. Crab Park, the environment, Trinidad Head, the redwoods. The community forest, HSU. Forest's coming up a lot.
May I suggest that you guys also track the chat? Not all of us will be able to do this, but if this is actually how you're going to keep track of things, the surveys, please check the chat as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll make sure everything in the chat gets taken out. Okay, so I'm going to see if we can get a word cloud of this first question. See what comes out.
So this is a phone caller. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I can't see anything. This is not on YouTube, your YouTube channel?
Correct. This is not on YouTube, but the whole meeting is recorded and we will make sure it's available on our YouTube channel after the meeting.
Okay, so I'm just gonna hang in there and pipe in as I can without seeing anything.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to move us on to our next question. And the next two are mostly just to see who's in the room. Did you come to the December 17th meeting? Have we presented to you before?
I'm sorry, how are you supposed to answer these questions?
Jen or Gillen, could you maybe drop the link in the chat and see if they can get access that way? So it looks like, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Hilo. If you go to the sift.ly on your web browser and put in the APB8 as the code, you'll be able to participate in the questions.
APB
8.
8.
The number 8.
All right, thanks, David.
And these first ones are pretty just entry level. We'll get to the ones that are more substantive near the end of the meeting. So we'll make sure that we're capturing everybody with us at the end. So I see 28 inputs received. It looks like we're about split. There are more people here tonight who did not attend, but we still have a fair amount of repeat customers as well. So this is the last question, again, just to get a sense of who's in the room, and we'll come back and do more polling at the end. But who are you representing in this meeting tonight? Are you representing yourself? Are you here representing HSU or a different school? Who was in the room? Right, looks like we have a fair amount of nonprofits here, businesses, which is great. We only had about 8% of people last time from the business community that identified that way. So it's great to see we're getting better representation for that tonight. All right, well, we're gonna close this out. So thank you everybody for playing around with this. And again, we'll come back to it at the end. And if you had any issues with logging on, we'll make sure to try and capture you with the next set of questions. So I'm going to turn it over to David to kind of give us some context about how what we're doing tonight fits in to the larger plans that we are working on. And take it away, David.
Thank you, Dilo. Would you allow me to share my screen? Perfect, thanks. First off, I just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. I know taking time out of your busy days is always, we're asking for an hour plus. And so it's, it's always appreciated when you come and participate. And we want to show that appreciation by making sure that you see reflected in the work that we're doing, the input that you're giving us. Dealer's going to go into that in a little bit, in a little bit more detail. I wanted to give a primer for folks as to, just big picture, what it is that we're doing here tonight, and how it's connected to the overall work that we're doing. I also wanted to touch base a little bit on some of the work that we're doing that's unique for this go around for the general plan update related to social justice and racial equity, which is a lens that we'll be using to evaluate all of the work that we do. So this is, consider this your General Plan 101. Just a second to pull this up. Okay, everyone see the square that says General Plan?
Yeah.
Not this square, the square on the screen. Great. Okay, so what is a general plan? What does it do? Why do we have it? general plan is one of the major efforts that we're trying to update during this process. Part of the reason why you asked you to spend the night with us and tell us what you think. Okay, so long story short, general plan is in the middle of a stack of ideas. At the very base is community vision. Tonight we're doing community visioning. We're asking you what you think about a range of different topics. The next layer is the general plan. We take this community vision and we craft it into policy. And not everyone's a policy wonk, so we're not going to get into a lot of policy in this meeting tonight, but we're taking the ideas, the concepts, the thoughts that you have, translating those into policy. And we'll come back around later and say, does this policy reflect the vision? That general plan then translates into codes, zoning ordinances, municipal codes, the regulations, and laws that we use to implement that policy document. So we have policy that translates into codes, which ultimately translates into projects on the ground, whether they be private projects or city projects. All of this has to be consistent with the general plan. And at the very core, it starts with this community vision. And so the community vision work that we're doing right now is really grounded in sort of the democratic principles of creating policy to implement the vision through projects. So let me just give you a real life example. That's really abstract, kind of hard to understand perhaps how community vision relates to projects on the ground and how those translate into the quality of life that we all experience as either residents, businesses, or visitors. To start, I'm getting a phone call at 7 o'clock is beyond me. To start, we're going to take a look at this actual policy or vision statement in the general plan. We move forward. In Arcata, public and private transportation come in a variety of forms, and we seek out and use the least polluting, most efficient methods. People come first. Bicycles, cars, trucks, and transit vehicles share the road with us. Bikeways and pedestrian paths connect all the parts of the city. That's the vision that's laid out for transportation in the general plan currently. That translated into a whole element of the general plan called the transportation element. This has all kinds of policy about a variety of different kinds of things related to transportation. It's a required element in general plan according to state law. We're updating it. But right now there's this policy T-7A, retention of railroad right-of-way. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but basically this is embedded in that transportation element. And it tells us that we want to use these railroad corridors for trails. We want to preserve them for future use. So this vision statement translated into a transportation element that has a specific policy about what we do with rail corridors in it that ultimately we use to justify the fact that we're going to spend millions of dollars to build trails on rails. And so here's our Annie and Mary Trail Connectivity Project. Staff can go and secure grant funding for these projects based on the fact that they're baked into our general plan. That general plan policy tells us we can do it because it was based on the vision. So here's a real world example of how a project that we see on the ground that affects people's lives started off as a policy, which was embedded in the general plan based on this vision. So what we're doing tonight is we're talking about vision. We're talking about the community's vision. I'm thrilled to see that we have about as many new people as we have returning people to help us with this process. And we're going to be focusing on these 4 different areas that you selected to participate in. These don't correspond, again, we're not asking you to be policy wonks. These don't correspond to any particular element. They're just topic areas. We're not asking you to be policy experts. We're asking you to tell us as individuals from whatever expertise you bring to the table, what is your vision? We're going to have a conversation about it. And largely what we're going to be doing in these breakout groups is listening to you, trying to bring that vision together so that we as the policy wonks, we as the general plan squares, can take that vision and craft policy for the next 20-year period for this, this upcoming planning effort. So we've got environmental and sustainability. We'll be talking about things like sea level rise, you know, how the forests are managed, you know, the bottomlands and how we preserve those. So we'd like to have your input on those. Growth and development, as I mentioned, is going to be sort of like the broad, large-scale patterns of growth and development within the city. Do we concentrate on infill? Where do we concentrate on infill? That sort of thing. Community and health is going to be all about providing for, active recreational opportunities, this sort of thing, and how do we ensure that there's health in the community. Neighborhood and design, or neighborhood and urban form, is really looking at what do we want the character of the town to look like, or character of certain neighborhoods to look like. And so those would be broadly the topics of conversation. So policy creates projects which enhance people's experience of this community. This is the general plan pyramid. Now, part of what we're doing tonight, as I mentioned earlier, is looking at social justice and racial equity. And why are we doing that? Well, if we only looked at a portion of the community vision, if we only looked at a segment of the community and asked them what they thought, we'd end up with only a partial community vision, which would result in a partial representation of that community vision in the general plan and so on and so forth, and ultimately end with projects that don't necessarily reflect equity, that don't necessarily reflect social justice, that were selected by only some of us and not all of us. Social justice and racial equity are important facets of the way that we're approaching this general plan update. And I want to take just a moment to recognize that racial equity is, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I just want to define it really quickly here for you so that we're all operating on the same, under the same framework. Racial equity is providing for policies that implement equitable outcomes for people of different races. And so regardless of the color of your skin, the policy provides for an equitable outcome. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is this important? When we approach general planning in the way that we're shown here, where we don't take into consideration how those are going to impact people of color, then we get disparate outcomes. The concepts of institutional racism or systemic racism have been around since the 60s. And it's really only in modern times, in recent years, that it's really gaining enough traction in the common vernacular that we can have these kinds of conversations about it. And I want to recognize and understand that not everybody is on the same page. I want to recognize and understand that not everybody has the vocabulary, and we're not expecting you to here tonight to. But I do want to make sure that as we're going into these conversations, we have a racial equity lens. And so if you're a person in this meeting who feels comfortable and confident asking the question, does this vision reflect equity? Does this vision reflect racial equity? Please speak up. Bring that conversation to the group and make it known what your thoughts are about that. We don't have to have the solutions tonight, but we have to start the conversation. One of the concepts that I've been thinking about and how to explain why this is important to discuss, specifically about racial equity, for example, is that, it's like mathematics. Can you imagine trying to solve math problems without talking about numbers? You can't solve systemic racism without talking about race. So that's why we're doing it. I appreciate you working with us through this new territory that we're all exploring together. And again, back to Jen's point, let's be sensitive to one another and appreciative. So that's why we're bringing these sort of 4 different elements of growth and development, environmental and sustainability, community and health, neighborhood and design with a racial equity and social justice lens. We also have this sort of other element, which is sort of innovation and innovative ways of approaching our development that we'd like you to continue to think about as well. You can bring that in if that's something that's of interest to you. All of this ultimately is a component of the strategic infill redevelopment program. This is a large-scale program that we're doing that involves many different planning documents, the general plan being one. We've also got some targeted rezonings that we're doing. The first is the Arcata Gateway area plan. And we'd like you to use this as a gateway to working with us over the next couple of years to do this large scale planning. We've got a website that we'll have posted into the chat here that houses all of this information about the results that we're getting, the planning documents as they're prepared, the engagement opportunities as those come out. We'd like you to have access to that website so that you can visit it frequently and stay in tune with what we're doing. The other item that I'd like to provide for you, if you go to that Strategic Infill Redevelopment Plan page, you'll see the video that we recently produced that explains a little bit about the efforts that we're doing. We're trying to provide some vignettes out there for folks to be able to get some interest. We're pretty proud of that first little video we did, so we'd like to share it with you. Go take a look at it. And then finally, just like to kind of get us moving on to the next phase of this. I'm going to turn it over to Dilo, and we're going to translate this into some listening instead of talking. And so again, want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I'm looking forward to getting into the group breakouts.
Thanks, David. Okay, would you mind stopping the share screen, and then I will share mine again. So really quickly, I'm going to bring us through the summary of our meeting on the 17th. So this meeting was just to start this very, very large conversation that we could go a lot of different directions with. And we're already a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to go through this extremely quickly, but know that you can access the full recording of the video and a very detailed summary from all the breakout groups on this website, and we will drop the link in the chat at the end of the meeting. So we asked some meeting set questions, and some of these will be repeated for you guys at the end, so you'll have the same opportunity to weigh in on them. We asked, what 3 issues are most important to you as we enter 2021? And obviously in the middle of a pandemic, answers really focus on health. They focus on COVID response. They focus on jobs, on shelter. Coordination with HSU also came pretty close to the top, though, all things considered. Envisioning Arcata in 2021 and beyond, you'll see that the first 2 results definitely outpaced everything else. Remaining community oriented and being equitable and inclusive were really, really important for people. But being sustainable, environmentally just, innovative, these also rose to the top. And we asked, as our community grows, what's most important to consider in the planning, climate action, and resilience, and a mix of housing types and affordability, again, really led the way. And then we asked a couple of questions that ended in these word clouds of, what do you love about Arcata? What makes Arcata special? And the biggest thing that came out of the last meeting was community. A lot of people focused on community as being what was so important to them about our local area. But you can see there are some other really big ones on here too. There's HSU, there's nature, there's the town, variety, we up people, things that rose to the top here. And then we asked in 3 words or less, what does the term equity mean to you as participants? And opportunity and access came out as being some of the most important themes based on the way that the participants at the last meeting defined it. So here we are left with a lot of big questions. How do we answer all of these questions and support the community in beginning to really think through these questions in a new way? We haven't done a general plan update in 20 years. So this is really an important time to be engaged and to start working with us to answer some of these questions. And we started to think through too, we just kept it very, very open-ended last time, but now we're trying to begin to nail some of this feedback back to specific parts of the general plan that we are going to be updating in the next couple of years. So that's why we picked the topics that we picked for tonight's discussion. It still will be very, very much open-ended. There are no bad ideas. It's really a chance for us to hear from you what your thoughts are, but these topics reflect the parts of the general plan that will be updated in the next couple of years. So what we're going to do now is finally get to the listening part. So we're going to break you up into groups and ask you to share your big ideas with us. And your facilitators will start by assigning a note taker and running you through in a little bit more detail what we heard at the December 17th meeting related to your topic. And then every participant will have a chance to continue to help us frame out that topic based on the things you want to talk about tonight. Okay, I'm seeing group 1 back in here, group 4 back in here.
Raise your hand if your group got cut off mid-sentence.
Sorry about that.
How you know, yeah, passionate attendees. Okay, well, we appreciate all of you. We're now going to do a lightning round summary where I just have the group leaders report out on what came out that they hadn't heard yet and what came out that was continually reinforced, things that keep rising to the top. So Katsi, can you start us off first, please?
Yes, we were the community and health group, and we had previously heard topics about the arts, racial equity, integration with indigenous people, the Wiyot tribe, the Karuk, Hupa, Tolowa, and Yurok. Healthy food access was something that came up in the previous meeting in December and continued to come up in this meeting. Civic engagement, reconnecting the community to the city, came up last time, and this time that was reinforced. Some new ideas that came about were robust community partnerships with arts organizations, businesses to really decentralize the decision-making process within the city function to include other groups. Food, physical activity, tobacco use, creating more healthy equity policies within our general plans. Food, physical activity, homelessness, mental health, street cleaning, programs to aid community members with mental health challenges came up in our conversations, as did education, specifically youth education in the arts, science, math in schools, but also creating recreation programming that supports these ideals, outdoor education programs for our youth and also adult community members, and educating the community in all of those fields. We also heard feedback about creating peaceful communities and maybe joining broader groups like the International Cities of Peace and taking on those ideals here within Arcata. Tourism, how we're promoting Arcata and how we're partnering with local businesses to promote Arcata and the beautiful city that we live in. It came back to health equity, smoke-free housing, how we're protecting our youth and our children. Also, affordable housing came up, transit, and I'll say transportation, greater connectivity with transportation for all. Community gardens, more robust community partnerships with organizations and businesses. And yeah, that's what we really talked about with community and health this time around.
Great, yeah, it sounds like a lot of new stuff came out of there. Very good job, team community health. So how about Emily, can you report out on your group, what came out that was new and what came out that was reinforced from what we'd already heard?
Sure. A lot of reinforcement around active transportation, shifting away from being an automobile dependent community, especially with regard to the downtown area. So that was echoed. A lot of discussion on zero waste, being a reuse economy, relying more on locally produced goods, and an emphasis on how do we make that reuse economy and that zero waste habit equitable. Things that came up that weren't on the list from the last time was discussion around clean stormwater, clean creeks, open space, improving our green belts so that we're better connecting our green belts, as well as adding active transportation opportunities in some of the green belts, using them as opportunities to manage and treat stormwater, which Arcata has some green belts. So I think that was success that we could build upon essentially. Yeah. Public education was another one that actually wasn't. I'm looking at my notes now. Public education came up as well. It's just community messaging, not only why are we doing activity A, B, and C, but also what are the resources for citizens that they can use to improve some of their habits or become better connected, specifically with partnering in the K-12 schools in the community.
Awesome. Yeah, public education is always a huge one. Okay, David, what about your group? What do you guys talk about?
Seems like we have an alternative transportation leaning group here tonight in general. That was also a theme that came up in our group. A lot of conversation about how to make communities walkable and bikeable, ensuring that as we densify and infill, that we are providing for adequate alternative transportation options and building out that infrastructure that we'll need to make those alternative modes safe. There was again a emphasis on Valley West. We heard last time as well. It was brought up that Valley West sometimes has a bad image, and that people may avoid it as a result. And ideas around providing more public spaces, little parklets, or narrowing the roads, making it more bikeable, making it connected through alternative modes of transportation more than just bus. That all of these could help improve the image and improve access, as well as helping the neighborhood in general. A couple of unique ideas that came up, some concepts around reparations for the WIOT and dedicating a city-owned parcel to the WIOT. The idea was floated of eliminating single-family zoning, making sure that folks could densify on those historically single-family lots. There was quite a discussion around that, a little pushback on that, identifying that some people really want to have single-family housing as an option for them. So that was an interesting conversation. And then I think the main theme that really came out in a lot of different ways was the idea of looking for denser, more compact development patterns. I think that's currently reflected in our existing general plan, that could probably be emphasized and enhanced based on some of the conversation that we've been having with the community recently. I think those are largely the ideas that came. Oh, I want to mention too the concept of economic development and making sure that you have ecologically and environmentally beneficial economic development was a theme that came up as well.
Awesome, good. So Joe, you are our last team leader here. What came out of your group before we go back in? Joe, you're muted.
Happens to.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. The cursor was off in cyberspace somewhere. So my group, neighborhoods and urban design, it was interesting that Valley West came up, transportation came up. So it echoes a lot of what we heard from the other groups. So that's really a nice theme to move forward. Valley West it was indicated that it's the highest concentration of hotel motels in Humboldt County. But then there's also a very large Latinx community as well. So it's these two kind of almost, I don't want to say competing, but these two different sectors that are living out there or being there. And how can we make it inviting for the visitors, but also make it a sense of community for those folks that live there and they call that home all the time, community center or something for them to gather. It was interesting that the Valley West came up a number of times, but then other neighborhoods were identified, the Creamery District, the Marsh District, where there's the subdivisions have small markets, the mixed use areas, Greenview Market, Valley West, Westwood Market and Sunnybray. Maybe they can use those shopping centers as kind of a community gathering place and use that as a central area where they can create that central or that neighborhood community. One of the ideas came up was decentralized decision making and allowing those neighborhoods to maybe create their sense of space. One of the ideas also came up was to use the artists. That was another theme that I heard from the other groups as well. But allow artists to maybe vision what those neighborhoods or business areas and developments look like. And so kind of instead of from a business perspective of looking at the development through that, look at how they can create these areas that would be more inviting to the community. There was a connection between the metrics of the collision reports that the police have and how that even in COVID, there's a maybe an increase, at least not a decrease in the number of collisions. And so the idea, I think the thought was to try to look at those metrics and see how we can improve. Again, the automobile was a target, but how can we get people from one place to another without being in the vehicle and using either pedestrian or bicycle or other modes of transportation in a safe manner? There was an interesting idea of maybe having some sort of requirement for new development to have 1% or a percentage of their improvement include public art in the project. I thought that was neat. And also kind of look at ways to renovate and beautify existing development. There was a concern about the number of vehicles that people are living in their cars in neighborhoods and how that kind of translates to social issues and affordability, and who knows what the reasons these folks are houseless and living in their cars, but they're part of our community too. So we need to kind of look at the neighborhood concerns about those things, those folks entering in those neighborhoods, but also how can we provide services to them as well. One concept came up was the number of trees on the east side of Arcata that's heavily forested, and sometimes that's detrimental to solar panels or even community gardens or gardens on the property itself. There was again, art came up and really supporting the people of color and the indigenous art, and trying to kind of create emphasis in the community on that as well. One of the things that I saw was kind of really having neighborhoods create a sense of identity and community, and how we can do that, I think, is one of the themes. I apologize if I missed anybody's important comments. I did not intend to, but that's it for.
That seemed very thorough.
All
I feel
right.
like that was an excellent synopsis
Yeah.
from everybody. So, okay, I just want to thank everybody again. Definitely the most interesting part about this meeting is what you all have to say, and you're bringing really fabulous ideas to us. So thank you again for being here. I know some people have had to jump off, but for those of you who remain, we're going to switch groups now and hopefully get you into the topic that you originally wanted if you didn't manage to get in that group last time. So we're going to pop you back out into groups. We might make these a little bit shorter because we're running a little behind schedule, but have at it, have fun, and we'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Okay, great. We're all back. It sounds like you had some good conversations. Let's start with David this time. What did you guys talk about? And mostly for this one, we're just going to hit on what did you hear that was new, very, very high level, and then we're going to move on to some more polling and close it out.
Sounds great. The new items that came up were daylighting creeks with pathways, emphasizing preservation of natural resource lands, parks, and et cetera. And there was some conversation about how infill ties in with that. And then there was a lot of focus on Valley West and some really great ideas that came out of that I'm going to reserve for others to speak.
Okay, awesome. Kasi, what about your group?
Some new things that popped up again was arts and culture, which seems to be a recurring theme, how arts and culture will lead us, and looking to artists and our cultural leaders to create healthy communities and neighborhoods. Childcare equity surrounding childcare costs and programming. Also reconnecting with the Wiyot tribe and creating land acknowledgements at city meetings. Transportation safety, very specific emphasis on safety, and we create these new infrastructures, but how focused are we on creating safe infrastructures for the folks who are walking and biking and utilizing them every day. Another thing that came up was the intersectionality of our interests and how there are a lot of themes overriding these various groups. And another thing was community healing and historical healing related to the genocide of Native peoples and the enslavement of Africans, and how as a community do we create healing. And one thing that came up as a suggestion was, are we using art for that healing process? For Valley West, again, open spaces, utilizing the arts, beautifying structures, that 1% of art to beautify the structure. And when it comes to new structures, but also beautifying the existing structures that we have in the Valley West neighborhood. And then one new thing that came up was trash collection, bulky items, having more community cleanup days. We have 2 for very specific neighborhoods, but how do we partner with outside organizations to create more community cleanup days? And that's what came up for community and health this time. And I just want to thank both of the groups for being so responsive and sharing during this meeting. Thank you all.
Awesome. Yeah, big shout out to Katsi too, because believe it or not, during COVID, community and health came up a lot. So she had a pretty heavy plate to start with. Okay, what about Joe? What came out new from your group?
Yes, there was a topic came up was graffiti in public spaces. We have a lot of kind of hardscape areas where we could have some public art there. Look at the community spaces. One of the largest community spaces we have was identified was our roadway systems. And it's kind of, how do people connect on roadways socially, especially when they're in a single occupant vehicle? So that's difficult. To really walk, one of the themes was walkability, neighborhoods, active transportation. One of the ideas came up to help with the neighborhoods in urban form was to public fruit gardens and having more edible gardens in these public spaces, instead of a lot of, the lawns where we just grow grass and mow it and blow it. How about pruning and trimming and have edible food for folks? One of the ideas that was interesting was the kind of the sense of community. How do we create a sense of community for those neighbors, those neighborhoods, for people that live there, where they can find shelter, find food? So kind of look at that as one of those goals that we need to achieve, and then try to create those metrics to measure that success. I'd like an idea of flexible zoning came up, mixed housing types, and kind of rewording some of the ideas that came out of some of the other groups was a collection of village centers, instead of, having like the plaza in these other neighborhoods. So mini plazas where people can gather there, and they're all unique. They're all unique to that individual neighborhood and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I'll let you move on.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Okay, Emily, what do you have for us?
Sure. So the broader topic of equity and inclusivity and diversity was talked about pretty heavily in this group. And the main focus was, how do we create a community that's safe and inspiring for our diverse community members? There was a lot of discussion around making the diverse community members and culture more visible, bringing those groups into processes, decision-making processes, decentralizing decision-making power, and really building our relationships on an ongoing basis with BIPOC stakeholders. And to do that, there was a lot of discussion around including them in the process, in the way where a diverse number of groups feel like they're involved, we follow up with them and follow through on delivering on the outcomes of the different processes.
Awesome. Okay, well, again, thank you all for taking that time. I really appreciate it. And what we're going to do now is go back into polling. I think everybody left on the call figured out the polling the first time. If not, let us know. And we're going to ask you some of the questions that we asked at the first visioning session, so participants have a chance to answer those questions if they hadn't answered them yet, and also some new questions. And then we'll just end with a little bit of Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen now and move it along to this next question. As our community grows, what is most important to consider in the planning? So you have a drop down here where you can choose from the items on the list. And this is a question that was asked at the last meeting.
And just to let everyone know, I did post into the chat again the SIFT LY and the code APB8. So
yeah, and it's also
here,
here on the top of the screen as well.
Yep.
So lots of ways to get it. Increasing community art is coming up to the top. It didn't last time, so that's kind of exciting to see the different answers we're getting. Climate action, that one is still going strong. Mix of housing types is moving up the list here. We have 20 inputs received and 44 devices connected. So I'm going to give it just a few more seconds here. Looks like that's probably what we are going to get. So climate action and resilience and increasing community art are coming out from this group as being some of the most important things to be considering. Okay, we're going to move on to this next one. Again, this is something that came to the last group. We're going to have you pick your top 3, same options as last time. Let's see how this group wants to categorize these. Racially equitable, community oriented. See, transparency always comes near the bottom, but we're going to do it anyway because we believe in transparency. Guess maybe that's just a given. Okay, we're seeing racially equitable and inclusive come way, way to the top, farther to the top than it did last time. So I take it that means there were some really positive conversations that happened in some of these groups about that topic and that it kind of sifted to the top. Community oriented, still coming in strong. And I'm going to give it just a couple more seconds. I know this one you have to kind of toggle through everything. So if you're on a phone, maybe it takes a minute. Okay, so transparency is at the bottom, but as I said, we're going to do it anyway. Racially equitable and inclusive and community oriented are coming to the top here. Okay, I'm going to close this one out and go on to a question that's very near and dear to my heart because we received a lot of people talking about this consistently. But I would love to have these participants define it. What does community in Arcata mean to you personally? And try and keep it to a brief sentence. That way, when we try and do a word cloud, we can pull out common themes. So this isn't necessarily essay format. And inclusivity, family, love, supporting local, common established goals, caring for each other, supporting each other, feeling safe, seen, and connected as a Black woman, sharing this place with neighbors, connectivity and pride, inclusivity. Okay, let's start seeing if we can pull out any themes here. Pretty evenly split. I see safe coming out as one of the biggest words, family coming out, inclusivity, kindness and caring. Nice, we're getting, yeah, more people taking this than the other questions. So I guess this was the winner. I was right. Okay, so you can see that there are some common themes, but there are a lot of different ways to define it too. There are no humongous words on this list. There are a lot of different ways to think about community, and hopefully we will hit on every single one of them in the next couple of years as we begin to use this as a lens to look at our updates to the general plan. Okay, so I'm closing this one out, and I'm going to ask a couple of closing questions. What are you excited to dig into next? And all of your options are topics that we are going to be revisiting in the general plan, that we're going to be having more meetings, more targeted meetings based on topic that you can engage with. Parks and Rec coming to the top. Everything else is pretty evenly split. Land use, gateway plan coming up. Ooh, land use is taking over. It's kind of exciting. Okay. So I know there are more devices connected since you guys answered that last question, so I'm going to leave it open for a couple more seconds before we close this out. But it looks like land use, public safety, transportation, and circulation are up here at the top. Urban design, I guess, is not as interesting to folks in this meeting, but we're going to keep plugging away on that one as well. Okay, so moving on, I believe to the last question here. How would you like us to continue to engage you? This is like the tip of the iceberg for engagement, and we want to hear from you about how you would like to continue to be engaged. Also, feel free to drop other methods in the chat, and there's going to be one other question I'm going to ask you to drop some answers in the chat too as well, while David kind of runs us through some next steps. Looks like town hall workshops are coming up to the top, and surveys are second, which is perfect because that's how we are planning to approach this. Okay. So thanks everyone for participating. We're just going to bring it back now to David to kind of finish out what the next steps are and how you can stay in touch with us. And then if anybody wants to stay for Q&A, you are welcome to. And while David is running us through that, I wanted to ask everyone to drop a name in the chat of a person or organization that wasn't here tonight that you wish was here. Who are we missing, and how can we make sure to go beyond who we're capturing right now? So thanks. Take it away, David.
All right, thanks for that, Dilo, and thanks for that last point to drop folks into the chat that you feel like need to be here. We do have an extensive community landscape, we call it. It's a list of our network and outreach that we reach out to people. We've been very intentful and purposeful about ensuring that we're inviting a broad swath of our community, but we also know that we're missing people. One of the ways that we'll use, or one of the tools that we'll use to assess who we're missing and who we need to pay more attention to reaching out to is the survey. Gillen popped into the chat the survey link. Part of that survey link, there's some information about your demographics, your personal demographics. These are anonymous, so we won't know who it's tied to, but it helps us to assess whether or not we're matching the demographics in Arcata and Humboldt County and the university with our outreach, or whether we're way off in certain demographics and we need to focus more attention there. One of the comments that came up in the last group I was in was, are you reaching out to youth? Are you asking people in the communities that you're trying to plan for? And the answer to all those questions is yes, we absolutely are. And we want to continue to build the momentum that we're starting with here. We really appreciate the time and energy that you put into this. The half of you that have returned, we hope that you'll return again. The new group, we're really looking forward to working with you more on this. This visioning is large scale, it's broad. Some of you come with very specific, unique perspectives on particular topic areas, and we're going to move forward with our engagement and start delving into those more specific topic areas, and those may be of more interest to you, and we'll get more detail in those specifics. So I'm not going to run through this. It's on the screen. You had an opportunity to read it, but what I will tell you about the upcoming events and the dates that are presented here is that we are right on the sort of turning point. We're getting ready to hire a consultant to help us with this large scale planning work and bring it from the conceptual into the concrete to have actual plans to start reviewing. We'll be taking the information that we received in the various, whether it's the chat box, the conversations that we recorded, or the surveys that we're providing, bring all that information together and reflect that into these planning documents. And so you're a part of this change that we want to see. And for that, I thank you. I guess, the last thing I wanted to say is that, we're here, whether it's a town hall or not. If you want to reach out to us, the 825-5955 is the main number. You look on our website and get a hold of us, any one of us individually. If you wanted to follow up with something specifically, please do reach out. We're here and we're excited to talk about this with you. The e-notifications, if you can't grab this off the screen necessarily, but we'll pop it into the chat box here. That it's a listserv that'll send out notification of meetings like this. And so we're trying to reach out in a lot of different ways, but if you're interested in hearing more, please sign up for those. Also, Kati, who worked with us tonight, I see this popped up in the chat too, is, she manages our social media and she'll be pumping all these notifications out to you as well. So yeah, I guess I want to respect your time. We're a couple minutes over here. We'll stick around for questions and answers. If you have any large group questions and answers you wanted to talk about, but other than that, I just want to thank you and say good night. Bye, Paul. I see a question from Heather Amber. Are you planning on doing a health element? We are, at this point, we've not committed to that course. Dilo, can you confirm whether we had that in the RFP?
We did not. No, it's not in the RFP as a standalone thing, but it will likely be woven throughout the elements that we are updating. And we've definitely heard it as a theme. So we'll continue to work towards that.
Yeah, I think that's the appropriate response.
Are you a community that has to abide by the SB 1000, the environmental justice?
We are not, but we are incorporating environmental justice pursuant to SB 1000 into this update.
Thank you.
And we'll be doing all the climate planning work that's required of new safety elements as well. Hey, Youth Art. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I'll just call you by your screen name.
That's okay. I just wanted to know if you had a list of like local Black arts organizations that will be able to be a part of the implementation of the strategic arts plan or whatever community art projects that are involving racial equity moving forward to the fruition, including the allocation of sharing power and resources to that end.
That's a great question. I'm going to lean on Dilo and Gillen, who've been really leading that effort.
Sure, yeah. So I will also lean on Gillen, but I'm going to start answering this question. I don't think we have a standalone list specifically for that demographic, but we definitely have been trying to reach out to Black artists and organizations that represent those artists. I know that the Ink People has a few related ones as Dreammakers, and I believe your Youth Art Will Succeed was interviewed as part of the drafting, but we are always looking for new partners and new resources and new people to talk to. So if you have a list or would like to help us in creating one, we would love to have you provide that information to us.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up and say, great to see you, Drea. Yeah, your thoughts and your words have definitely influenced the plan from the interview that we conducted, and also speaking with Mo from Black Humboldt. But anyone else that you think that we should be speaking to, please shoot them my way, and I'd love to have the conversation.
Am I still muted?
Nope, you're good.
No, we can hear you.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm looking for maybe a plan of action that will incorporate more than just our voices, but also implore/employ and make sure we're included in every step of the way, not just our opinion, but taking the lead on actually helping co-create the art installations and be a part of directing the funding and budget and resources of allocations to equitable progress in the city.
I think that's a really great point. And I'm sorry, my name's David. I don't know you.
I'm Andrea. Yeah,
Andrea, okay,
I'm the program director of Youth Art Will Succeed, and yeah, Gillen does know me. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, nice to meet you, Andrea. I think that's a really good point that you raise. And I think that, part of what we're trying to do with this outreach is to not just engage people on, the topics that we're trying to, move forward for the community, but also kind of develop a common language so that we're learning how to, to have the conversations that we need to have. And I think you've raised a really important point. Not a lot of people know how to access, our government processes, and I'd love to have a follow-up conversation with you about how that happens. I think to Gillen's point, the art strategic plan is a very, the way I would kind of look at it is, it's a very organic document and it's not complete yet, and so the community input that's been used to develop that is as participatory as the community is engaged in it. We're sort of doing that same process with this visioning, is that, we want to create with the community, not for the community. And so, I really appreciate you being willing to step into that role and to make, those important issues, raised to the fore. So please do follow up with us, and we can talk more about how to accomplish those goals together.
And I'll also just add that the designation of Playhouse Arts as our local arts agency and the formation of an advisory council there and the selection of members for that council that will represent Arcata both demographically and geographically is how we're kind of envisioning a collaborative leadership between the city and artists through this local arts agency and that advisory council.
Great point. Any other burning questions, thoughts, ideas?
Just the how to best follow up on this topic with you, and really talking about how, in order to really talk about how we make sure that one organization is not just taking the lead on this project, especially being that it's a white-owned organization, and how we can share power with other arts agencies and organizations of color that would like to be more involved.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I popped my contact information into the chat. You can reach out to me directly. We can follow up on that. Or if you want to, touch base through Gillen, we can set up a follow-up meeting. I think we can discuss that.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Does anybody else have questions or thoughts they wanted to leave us with?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the great job that Jen and Dilo did this evening. So appreciate all the hard work that everybody put into this. And forgive me if I forgot anybody else. I'm sure
You forgot
Dave-
yourself, Joe.
Hey,
Thank
David,
you,
can-
Joe.
I second that. Thank you all so much. It's great to meet you all, and I hope we can move forward in creating this beautiful vision you all have that we're co-creating. Have a good night.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
All right. See you, Andre.
Yeah, well, we hope you will all join us again. This is not the end, it is the beginning, and it only will work if we do it together. I know it's
So
easy, but it's true.
Dilo, when do you meet again? When does it happen again?
We don't have a meeting scheduled yet, so that's why it's important to sign up for the listserv, because that's how you will get updated. Also, Alex, I know you're the most savvy social media person of all time, but for everybody else, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and Kati will make sure to be posting everything there as well. So we don't unfortunately have a full calendar of all of our topics yet. It's kind of developing organically until we get our consultant on board. But we are planning to do, I don't know if we mentioned this, we're planning to do a meeting, a visioning meeting in Spanish in March, probably March 25th, but we're still nailing down the date with the facilitators. And then after that, we're going to move into topics. And so we'll have to discuss with the consultants where they want to dig in first, if they want to start with things like land use or things that likely will not change as much, like open space.
So what kind of a person are you hiring or company are you hiring to assist you?
David, why don't you take that one? we haven't picked them yet, but let's get the director's opinion on that one.
But what are you looking for?
We're hiring the most awesome company.
Okay,
That's
of
who we're hiring.
course you would, but nevertheless.
So we're hiring the company has to be multidisciplinary. They have to bring a whole host of different disciplines together to help us with the planning work, help us with the design work, help us with the CEQA work, the environmental work, be able to conduct all the special studies that are going to be necessary to implement this vision. And so we're right now reviewing the responses that we got to our RFP, and we're going to the council on March 17th to award.
Okay.
And so, I'm really excited about the proposals we received, and we'll be releasing those on the 11th in our staff report for the 17th.
Thank you. Just curious, because it's going to be, it's so different from general plan updates in the past of what's happening. Well, maybe it's not, but I think it is. And
I think it's pretty different.
And because I was in 2 general plan updates in the past, one in the 70s and the last one. And I just think this is a much more creative way of doing it. And I think it's going to be really important. And we've advanced so far in our thinking and opportunities and the visioning for the community that it's really important for somebody to be the cutting edge of things.
Thanks. Yeah, we have a great group working here at the city, really hard for the community every day.
Oh yes, I know that. Thank you. Thank you for being that way. I just wanted to compliment you for all that you're doing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if we really get into Valley West there and thinking about what to do there somewhere, that I think that has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So. Yeah, there is. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that.
So I am going to take advantage of this very convenient time to tell all of staff that HCOG, in developing our update of our long range planning document, would love to show up for all of these and then collaborate in any other way, because of course you're a member agency and your community is part of the region. So for public outreach and stuff, just remember I'm an ally and
we would love
a collaborator.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
And hey, Una, thank you so much for coming to the aviation committee the other night. I saw you on there.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'd love to crash your meetings too.
Yeah, co-crashing, co-collaborator crashing. Okay, well,
Thank you all. Good night.
Yeah, last minute here. Anybody have anything else? Any other questions? Otherwise, we're gonna pull the plug.
Well, you know what the only thing I would say is that the owners of the Valley, what I would like to see if there's a way that we can get the managers for the Valley West Shopping Center engaged in the next meetings somehow. There's two of them that are running it now, and the owner is out of Santa Rosa. So I have their contacts, and I think it would be really, for that center anyway, because that's the core, it'd be really interesting to see if they would become more involved, and then they could pass that on to the owners and see what could happen and how they could excite the owners. Anyway, that's just they're missing, and we're missing that component. And we're also probably missing the component of, I can't think of his name, but he was on the Fortuna City Council, and he developed where the tractor store is, that whole development there. And it would be interesting for either he or his wife to be part of this, because that's another whole area of development, and that's the connection that we have to the river, and having access there for maybe a community center. There's going to be a park. So I think we need to get some of these other individuals that actually have some ownership into some of these areas to join in on this visioning.
Absolutely.
Those are my thoughts.
Any of those
All right,
contacts,
well, thanks.
Alex, that you can share with us would be fantastic.
Yeah, give us the digits.
Yep. Send it
Okay,
our
well,
way.
I can do one of them, but you all know how to contact the people that have the property, because they were in years of getting that developed. David, you know them.
Yeah.
I can't think of their names, but you have to have their contacts. But I will get you the information for the property managers for the Valley West Shopping Center.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. Well, on that positive note, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. And thanks everyone again for attending, and thanks everyone for facilitating. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Good night.